Dear listeners, the story we are about to hear is set in a small, quiet town in the American Midwest called Havenwood. It is a place where old wooden houses sit silently under the bright golden sun, yet hidden deep within are stories of love, loneliness, and the unspoken fractures in family relationships. This is the story of Lena, a woman caught between a flirtatious appearance and a solitary heart. Of Ryan, the young brother-in-law, dealing with the confusion of his coming of age. Of Mark, the kind, good-natured husband who was oblivious to his wife's needs. And of Hank, the single, cunning neighbor. Listen closely to see how loneliness in one's own home can sometimes be the most dangerous catalyst. An August afternoon in a small, poor hilly town in the northern part of the United States always carried a peculiar feeling of being both stifling and quiet. A few dry branches of late-season maple trees occasionally rustled like people whispering stories. At the end of the cracked dirt alley was the old three-bedroom house belonging to Lena and her husband. Lena was perhaps the most talked about woman in Havenwood, not because of her beauty, but because of her barely concealed flirtatiousness. Lena was 38 years old, with sharp features, the type of small-town woman who knew how to take care of herself, applying light lipstick even when just going out to buy spices. Her sparkling eyes made many young men in the area flustered, while the neighboring women would sigh and remark, "Lena is so beautiful, but so unhappy. Too bad she's a little loose." Lena would just smile, neither angry nor defensive. A flirtatious woman rarely needs anyone to understand. She only needs someone to look. Her husband, Mark, was the complete opposite. A thin, simple, kind man, as wholesome as a boiled potato. He worked as a plumber around the area, leaving early and returning late, always in faded clothes, smelling of sun and pipe glue. He truly loved his wife, loved her so much that he endured all the gossip, treating it as if the wind were blowing through an empty house. Also living in the house were Mr. George and Mrs. Helen, Lena's in-laws, two sincere, rustic elderly people burdened by old-fashioned values. If anyone mentioned anything strange about their daughter-in-law, Mrs. Helen would snap, "Beautiful women are envied. You shouldn't talk nonsense." But life often likes to tease the gentle-hearted, and things began to get complicated when Ryan, Mark's younger brother, unexpectedly returned home to stay. Ryan, 24, dropped out of art school in New York, claiming he was tired of the city and wanted to return home to find his inspiration. The family only sighed, but they were also happy that the young son came back instead of running off forever. The day he arrived, the sun was scorching. He wore a torn backpack, headphones over his ears, a baseball cap, looking like a mix of a restless kid and a dreamer. As soon as he stepped into the yard, he saw Lena hanging up bedsheets, wearing a long-sleeved shirt that was a bit too short. The wind lifted one side of the skirt, revealing skin too white for a hard-working country woman. Their eyes met, and Ryan awkwardly nodded. "Oh, hi, sis." Lena slightly tilted her head, a faint smile on her lips, as if someone had accidentally wiped a ray of sunlight across her mouth. "Haven't seen you in a long time. You look different, huh?" Ryan's ears turned red, unsure if it was from the heat or the way she looked at him. Strangely, for a moment, he felt his heart pound, his throat dry as if he had just eaten a spicy pepper. He was never good around beautiful women, especially one who was used to making men feel awkward. Mrs. Helen rushed out from the kitchen, wiping a ladle. "Oh, Ryan is home? Go take a shower, son. Lena, you cooked chili with beans waiting for him." Lena turned to Mrs. Helen. "Mom, let the boy rest after his dusty trip. He must be hungry." The word "boy" she used was soft, yet it made Ryan feel much older. He glanced secretly at his sister-in-law again before hastily pulling his suitcase into the room. That evening's dinner was more festive than usual. Mr. George happily poured beer. It's much better having the youngest back home. Ryan sat next to Mark, but his eyes occasionally sneaked glances at Lena. She wore a simple plaid shirt, her hair tied up, but the way her slender fingers picked up food, combined with her soft voice, made Ryan feel like he was watching a movie with an excessively beautiful actress. "Ryan, eat up. You've been traveling all day." She spoke softly like the wind. "Yes, ma'am." Just the word ma'am, sister-in-law in this context, made his heart beat like a village drum. Mark paid no attention, eating while talking about the plumbing project he was working on. Mr. George smiled widely, and Mrs. Helen constantly added food to both her daughter-in-law and her youngest son's bowls. But it was the look from the neighbor, Hank, the hawk-eyed, from outside the gate was most noteworthy. He stood leaning on a crutch, not because he was injured, but out of habit to look imposing, peering at the family dinner like a 4K camera. He looked at Lena like a fighting rooster and then glanced at the newly arrived Ryan, his eyes sharp, as if he had just caught the scent of interesting gossip. "Lively house," Hank called out loudly. Lena flinched. Ryan wondered whom he was talking to. Mrs. Helen irritably dismissed him. "Go eat, man. What are you standing there?" But Lena felt a little guilty. Flirtatious women are not afraid of men, but they are very afraid of women or men who constantly gossip. That night, it drizzled, and Ryan sat in his room watching the clattering fan, chewing on his pen, feeling restless for no reason. It had been a long time since he was in this familiar house. The house was damp, with a tin roof and peeling plaster walls, but there was something new that made him unable to lie still. It was Lena. The look in her eyes when she hung up the towels, her voice when she invited him to eat, the fleeting smile when she talked to Mrs. Helen. "She's just my sister-in-law," Ryan told himself, then laughed at his own thoughts. But the more he tried not to think, the clearer Lena's image became. He clicked his tongue, lightly hitting his forehead as if trying to chase away the silly thought. Then a strong wind brought a crashing sound from the porch. Ryan opened the door to check and was surprised to see Lena gathering clothes that were soaked by the rain. Her shirt was slightly sticking to her, and streaks of rain ran down her cheeks, making him awkwardly look away. "Oh, why are you out here? It's cold. Go inside." She spoke without looking at him, her hands still hurriedly picking up the clothes. I heard a noise." She smiled softly. "You're not used to the rain?" "I'm used to the rain, but—" Ryan was about to say something, but stopped, because Lena turned and looked at him. Her eyes were both teasing and seemingly understood exactly what he was trying to hide. The moment lasted only a few seconds, but was enough to make Ryan confused. Lena bent down to pick up the last shirt, suddenly losing her balance slightly. Instinctively, Ryan stepped forward to steady her. His eyes met hers for a moment, and that was enough for both of them to freeze. The rain was light, the atmosphere was still, and only the rustling of the maple leaves could be heard. "Thank you," she said quietly. Ryan swallowed. "It's nothing." She stood up, holding the pile of clothes. The woman's figure, faintly yellowed by the porch light, made Ryan feel like he had just stepped into a romantic movie scene. "You shouldn't stand here for long," she said, stepping inside. Ryan stood there for a few seconds to catch his breath. Lena was also wondering why she was trembling. A flirtatious woman might be used to being looked at by men, but rarely shaken by the gaze of a young man, especially her brother-in-law. That surprised her, and surprise often leads to indulgence. The next morning, the sun was just rising, and the smell of damp earth spread across the garden. Mrs. Helen called, "Ryan, come help your sister-in-law pull out these weeds." Ryan rushed out, his hair still uncombed. Lena was bending over the cabbage rows, the back of her shirt slightly wet with dew, her body curving gently with each tug of a weed. He paused for 2 seconds to calm his heart. Lena heard his footsteps and turned around. "Oh, you're up early? Here to help me?" "Yes, Mum told me." "That's good. My back is aching after a few days of doing this." He bent down to help. They worked on the same row, about a meter apart. Every time she pulled hard on a stubborn lead, her hair would fly towards him carrying a faint scent. Ryan tried to focus on the dirt, but it was so difficult that he kept sighing. Lena noticed, laughing. "Why are you sighing like a woman in heartbreak?" "No, I am not," blushed Ryan. "Then why is your face so red?" she teased. "It's the sun." "Is it sunny already this early?" She looked up. The air was still cool. Ryan daren't answer. Lena smiled, a smile that made him want to turn away, but at the same time want to keep looking. A while later, she asked, "So, what's your plan now? Came back home. What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet. Maybe look for a job around here and help out Mom and Dad." "Yeah, coming home is good. City life is exhausting," she spoke sadly. "You're tired even here in the countryside?" Ryan looked up. "What are you tired of?" She pursed her lips. "It's nothing specific, but my flirtatiousness, the thing that makes people gossip, is also a source of fatigue. I like being looked at, being seen, being cared for with someone's eyes. It's like an inexplicable instinct." But she couldn't say that to her young brother-in-law, who was blushing while watching her bend over. She only said briefly, "Every woman has her own troubles." Ryan didn't fully understand, but sensed a hidden sadness beneath that smile. In the late afternoon, when the whole family was napping, Ryan sat on the porch, fiddling with his phone. The wind blew lightly and a chicken clucked somewhere. Suddenly, Hank, the hawk-eyed, stuck his head over the fence. "Ryan, living here now?" "Yes, probably." The old man smiled cunningly. "Living in the same house with such a beautiful sister-in-law. Be careful not to vibrate, son." Ryan choked on his drink. "Why are you talking about silly things?" "When a man and a woman live close for a long time, there's bound to be a little spark. And your Lena is quite the beauty." "You're talking nonsense." "Nonsense or not, time will tell." Hank smiled, chewing gum. Ryan was annoyed, but felt the sentence hit exactly where he was hiding his feelings. Just then, Lena stepped out of the house to take in the laundry. The sunlight shone on her face. Hank glanced at her as if taking a picture. "Well, I'm heading home. Such a lively house," he said, and walked away. Lena frowned and asked Ryan, "What did he just say?" Nothing at all, sister-in-law." She looked at Ryan suspiciously, but then just shook her head and sighed. "That old man is such a busybody. Don't pay attention to him." But how could Ryan ignore it? Half because Hank was right in a way, and half because he was afraid Mark would coincidentally notice, because Mark loved his wife like a treasure, but could never guess the heart of a flirtatious woman. And Lena never expected that since Ryan came back, her life's rhythm was disrupted. His young, sincere, slightly awkward gaze reminded her of when she was 20, when her heart hadn't become numb and every rumor was sharp as fire. Late one afternoon, the sky turned to a gentle breeze, and great clouds stretched over the hill behind the neighborhood, signaling that drizzle was coming. In the village, the loudspeaker was still crackling, announcing the schedule for livestock vaccinations. Ryan stood on the porch, leaning against the column, looking at the neighbor's banana garden without being able to focus. Since Hank, the hawk-eyed, dropped that vague comment at noon, his heart felt stirred up. Living close to such a beautiful sister-in-law, It'd be strange if you didn't vibrate. That crude sentence kept echoing. Ryan bowed his head and sighed. She's my sister-in-law. I must know my limits, he reminded himself. But whenever he thought of Lena's eyes, thought of her bending over to pull weeds in the garden, thought of the moment his eyes met hers last night, that sense of limit became as soft as a lump of dough. Just then, a light slipper sound came from inside. Lena appeared, holding a basket of vegetables, glancing at him. Why are you standing there spacing out? Help me pick through these vegetables. Ryan flinched. Yes, ma'am. His hair, messed up by the wind, fell lightly on his shoulder. Today she wore an old floral shirt. She looked like a princess in his eyes. He didn't dare look for long. Lena picked the vegetables skillfully, her fingers soft. Every time she tossed a bad leaf aside, a faint scent followed. Ryan, on the other hand, picked them frantically, his big fingers clumsy. She noticed and laughed. Why are you tearing the vegetables like that? I'm not used to hard work, so my hands are a bit heavy. Yes, heavy hands are good. Good sometimes. But with vegetables, you have to be gentle. Her voice was slightly lower. And for some reason, the word gentle made Ryan feel like he had just heard a vague innuendo. He didn't dare look up at her anymore. Behind the hibiscus hedge, Hank had been standing there all along. He leaned on his crutch, chewing gum, his eyes squinted. But he was actually observing like a night owl. He murmured, I told you. That Ryan is looking at his sister-in-law like she's a bowl of chicken soup on a cold day. He watched for a long time. The more he looked, the more it confirmed his suspicion. Beautiful woman, young man, poor family, and Lena's husband is as gentle as a doormat. Plenty of chances for something to happen. Hank was so delighted that he lightly tapped his crutch against the hibiscus tree to startle the two of them. Thump. Ryan jumped, dropping the whole pile of vegetables. Lena frowned. What was that sound? Ryan looked around but saw no one. Hank was quick as a fox, slipping behind the bushes. Lena stood up, squinting towards the next yard. I think someone was there. Did you hear it? I heard a sound like a crutch tapping, Ryan said truthfully. Hank, she pouted, her voice contemptuous. That old man is always spying on people's houses. Ryan's face was pale. Lena was also losing patience. Flirtatious women are used to being admired, but hates being watched. When evening came, the drizzle started falling. Mark hadn't returned from his construction job because he was finishing the plastering of Mr. Lim's house on the mountainside. Only the brother and sister-in-law were left in the kitchen. The kitchen had an old, tiled roof, and the straw smoke smelled sweetly of the countryside. The firelight from the stove cast a soft glow on Lena's face, making her features unusually delicate. She was stirring the butter garlic fish and said, You stay here a little longer, and you'll understand our village's ways. People's mouths here are sharp. Ryan nodded. I've noticed. Hank's comments were annoying. If that old man stopped spying on others, our neighborhood would lose its gossip, she sighed. But still, don't pay attention, and don't let people talk nonsense and make you think silly things. Ryan unconsciously looked at her. She turned, her eyes meeting his. For a second, both were silent. He suddenly realized those eyes were beautiful and sad. The kind of sadness a woman harbors after living too long in the indifference of a kind husband. She quickly turned away, her voice slightly shaky. The fire is too big. Hand me the pot lid. Ryan handed it to her. Their eyes met for the second time. This time it wasn't the rain or the wind, but the warmth. Both hesitated, but no one spoke. Outside the small kitchen, Hank stood crouched under a guava tree, listening to the voices coming out. The drizzle made his eyes cold, but he still smiled sinisterly. "It's really starting, huh?" That night, Ryan tossed and turned. Outside, the wind howled and the rain pattered on the tin roof. Inside his room, he couldn't fall asleep. Lena's image was like an oil lamp. It wouldn't turn off, flickering constantly. While lying down, he suddenly heard light footsteps outside his door and jumped up. Lena's slippers! She went out to the porch to fetch a shirt she had left behind in the afternoon. The rain had soaked it. Ryan pulled back the curtain to look out, his heart leaping. She stood alone in the dark, her hair flying in the wind, her shirt also fluttering, lightly clinging to her body because of the dampness. She shivered, reached up to smooth her hair, and looked up at the sky. Somehow, that moment was breathtakingly beautiful. Beautiful in a sad, poignant way, like a lonely woman waiting for something that hasn't arrived in a long time. Then she turned her head. Her eyes inadvertently swept across Ryan's room window. He didn't have time to hide. Their eyes met in the darkness. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Ryan felt a lump in his throat. Lena looked at him a little longer, then gently pursed her lips and turned away as if nothing had happened. But that moment was enough to keep him awake until morning. The next day, gossip began to spread in the village. No one said it directly, but the way people looked at Lena when she went to the market changed. A few vegetable sellers whispered, "Her brother-in-law is back. You can tell by his face that he likes women, and everyone likes Lena. The boy's eyes are glued to her like a bee to honey. I wonder if anything has happened yet." Lena held the basket of vegetables, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't afraid of rumors, but this time was different. It hit exactly what she was trying to hide. That afternoon, she came home to find Ryan chopping wood, his shirt soaked with sweat, his jawline sharp. She turned away, her heart beating strangely fast. "Who am I?" she asked herself. A sister-in-law? A 38-year-old woman? The wife of a man who was kind to the point of being oblivious. But when she looked at Ryan, she felt younger, lighter, like she was 20 again. She took a deep breath, reminding herself, no, I can't think that way. But the whispering outside the alley started again. "Hank just said he saw the two of them sitting together last night. Is that so? He said they looked suspicious." Lena's face hardened. She immediately understood. Hank had seen everything and added fuel to the fire for his amusement. Anger flared up, mixed with fear. Fear that her husband Mark would find out, fear of the gossip, or fear of her own heart being drawn to where it shouldn't go. That evening, while doing the dishes, she asked Ryan quietly, "Did you see anyone in the garden last night?" "I'm not sure, but I think I saw a shadow." "Hank!" She ground her teeth. Her voice was genuinely annoyed, but her eyes held undeniable worry. Ryan looked at her, wanting to comfort her, but didn't dare. He only said softly, "Don't worry, sis. I won't let anyone talk nonsense." She looked at him, and that gaze contained a bit of gratitude, a bit of tremor, and a bit of warmth that made Ryan freeze. They stood close to each other, their breath mingled with the smell of dish soap. A distance of only a few inches, too close for two people who shouldn't be close. Lena backed away first, a little hastily. "Go to bed." "Yes, good night, sis-in-law." She didn't reply, but her ears were slightly red. That night, the wind blew hard. Ryan stared at the ceiling, certain of one thing. This was just the beginning. And in a poor town like Havenwood, the fastest thing to spread wasn't the wind, but rumors. That afternoon, the late autumn sun was like honey, spread over the cracked dirt yard in front of Mr. George and Mrs. Helen's house. The thin blades of grass rustled in the wind, like the murmurs of the quiet countryside. At the end of the day, the sunlight illuminated his vibrant face, the carefree vitality of a young man old enough to feel longing, to be stirred by a woman. In the kitchen, the steady sound of Lena's knife and chopping board, accompanied by the savory smell of sautéed onions, was intoxicating. Ryan glanced through the half-open kitchen window. Lena's back curved gently as she bent over the stove, her faded brown shirt hugging her body. A drop of sweat trailed down her neck and back, vaguely visible on the fabric. Ryan swallowed hard. Oh my God, how can I be normal in front of this scene? He awkwardly turned his face away, but his eyes automatically returned to the door. The smell of food was not what made him hungry. It was that faint, warm scent emanating from inside. Just then, Lena turned around, holding a wooden spoon. Her eyes met his gaze. "What are you doing standing there, Ryan? If you want to steal a bite, come in." Her voice was drawn out, sounding intentionally teasing. Ryan's heart pounded. I wasn't doing anything, just catching the breeze." "Well, there's plenty of wind in the kitchen. Come in and lend me a hand," she said, tilting her head. Her dark hair, a few strands messy with sweat, made her flirtatious appearance even more captivating. Ryan stepped in, trying to avoid looking directly, but his eyes automatically were drawn to her sweaty shoulder. "Hand me the basket of vegetables next to you," she spoke softly, like a breath. But when he bent down to grab the basket, Lena suddenly moved closer. Too close. Ryan could clearly smell the fragrance of her hair, the scent of a woman who had just been working in the kitchen, yet was naturally flirtatious, as if born that way. That scent made his heart skip a beat, like a lost chicken. Lena reached out to take the basket, but instead of grasping the handle, she accidentally or intentionally looked into his eyes. A brief, simple moment, but it felt like electricity ran through them. He flinched. She gently curved her lips, a smile that was half innocent, half looking straight into a person's heart. "You're grown up. Why are you so flustered, Ryan? Just a look in your face is hot. You really are a boy coming of age." "Who's flustered? Am I?" She raised her eyebrow, her voice lowered. "Then why are your ears so red?" Ryan quickly turned to look out into the yard, hiding his burning red ears. Inside, he felt indescribably mixed up and worried, as if he had been pulled into an inexplicable whirlpool. The afternoon quickly faded. The village loudspeaker played an old news bulletin. Ryan took a basin of water out to the porch to wash his face. The well water was icy cold this season, but couldn't cool down the heat rushing through his head. He dipped his face in, and before he could look up, he heard the clatter of wooden clogs. Lena stood at the door, her hands folded in front. "After dinner tonight, remember to sweep the yard for me, so guests don't laugh." "Guests? What guests?" He looked up, water dripping down his chin. "Hank. He's coming over to talk about the timber purchase with Mark." Her voice was casual, but her eyes were anything but. That name made Ryan's stomach drop. The old man was a widower who looked at women in a way that even other men in the village hated. Lately, he seemed to visit their house more often. Ryan frowned. Why does he come over so much? Lena twisted a strand of hair, her voice light as the wind. "Well, he comes to talk business with Mark. When men do business, you have to accept that people will come and go." He pursed his lips and said nothing. She took a step closer, standing right behind him, her breath lightly fanning his neck. "Do you hate him?" No, but," he stammered. "But what?" "But you can't stand him. His eyes look creepy." Lena chuckled softly. "We women are used to it. Let people look. If you don't like it, ignore them. What are you afraid of?" Then she leaned in and whispered, "Or are you worried about me?" The question was soft, but it touched the very spot he had been suppressing for so long. His heart pounded. He didn't dare answer. Standing still like a wooden statue, his hands gripping the basin. "Silence means yes," Lena said softly. Then she turned and went back inside, leaving a chaotic world behind her. That evening, Hank really did show up. He wore a faded checkered shirt, his hair slicked back with oil. As soon as he walked in, he flashed a wide grin at Lena. "Well, you look younger these days, Lena, and even more charming." She gave a faint smile, picking up the teapot without bothering to reply. Ryan watched the scene, his heart boiling, but all he could do was sit in the corner of the table, clenching his bowl. Mark, as honest and simple as ever, was delighted. "Brother Hank, please drink some country tea. We don't have much. We've been poor for generations. With my little brother home to help, maybe things will get a little better." Mark spoke, looking proudly at Ryan. Hearing that, Ryan's heart sank. Mark was so kind-hearted that he didn't see anything secretly happening right before his eyes. That kindness made him pity his brother, but it also made his heart ache knowing he was keeping a secret no one else knew. Lena came out of the kitchen, her eyes quickly glancing at him, full of hidden meaning. Then she turned to Hank with a polite formality. Ryan bowed his head over his bowl, his heart drumming, thinking, "Mark, you don't know the extent of the ambiguous looks passing between your wife and your brother." That evening passed heavily for Ryan, even though nothing appeared unusual on the surface. Hank finished his tea, chatted a bit, and left. But the look he left behind felt like a sticky smear. In the already cramped house, a collective sigh seemed to hang in the air. Mr. George sat in a corner, his wrinkled face half thoughtful, half watchful. He had been quiet lately, but his eyes missed nothing. Unlike Mrs. Helen, who trusted her daughter-in-law implicitly, he was sharper, more prickly, and more experienced. Ryan knew that very well. The next morning, the sky was barely lit and white dew still hung in the banana garden. Mr. George was already busy cutting dry banana leaves to make ropes. A few hens clucked around his feet, occasionally flapping their wings. Ryan stopped, his heart momentarily tightening. Mr. George quickly glanced towards the kitchen door, where Lena was hanging towels, and then lowered his voice. "You need to watch out for that Hank. He's not simple, you know. His eyes are shifty and he talks in vague hints. He comes to haul bamboo, but he turns into our house a bit too often." Ryan was silent. The old man continued, "I'm old, but I'm still sharp. That guy has intentions for this house." Ryan broke out in a sweat. "What intentions, Dad?" Mr. George scoffed lightly. "What else? A widower looking at another man's wife with unhealthy eyes? And this house." He paused, and then spoke clearly. "Whoever has a family should protect it. Don't wait until you cross the line to worry. It'll be too late to lock the stable door after the horse is bolted." Having said that, he drove the knife into the piece of wood, stood up, and brushed his hands, as if what he had just said was just a common remark. But Ryan stood still, every word of his father piercing his ears. By the kitchen door, Lena heard every sentence, her face flushed. She immediately turned away, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted a damp towel. That noon, the whole family ate. The meal was simple: a plate of boiled greens, some pork fat cracklings, and a bowl of mild bean stew, but the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken things. Mr. George fretted, sipping his soup and gently reiterating, "I've said it already. Watch out for that Hank. We may be poor, but our people are not, especially the young women. They easily become targets for wandering eyes. Walls have ears, so be mindful of your actions." Mark looked up, bewildered. "Huh? What are you talking about, Dad? Old Hank is a good man. He always helps me haul bamboo. He's a widower, so we should feel sorry for him, not suspect him. I'm old, but I'm still sharp. That guy has intentions for this house." Mark still didn't understand, just smiled gently and put a piece of vegetable in his wife's bowl. "Oh, my wife is good and decent. Why would anyone pay attention to our house?" Lena nearly dropped her bowl, her face burning. That heat wasn't solely from shame or fear, but because of an unnamed feeling in her heart, which simultaneously touched her feminine pride and secretly aroused something vague. As for Ryan, he couldn't lift his head. He heard every word his father said, every naive sound from Mark, and every breath of Lena sitting across from him. He knew exactly who understood what and who understood nothing at all. In the afternoon, Lena took a basin of clothes out to the well to wash, splashing water around. The sunlight shone on her white hands. Every twist of her clothes made Ryan's body unconsciously follow the rhythm. That female figure made him stand frozen by the fence. She looked up at him with a teasing look. "Why aren't you helping? What kind of man stands rooted to the spot like that?" He awkwardly walked over, intending to scoop water, but she spoke softly. Her voice was slightly strained with excitement. "Hey, don't take what Dad said to heart. The old man just suspects things for no reason." Ryan looked straight into her eyes, daring to look for this long for the first time. I know, but Dad wasn't wrong, sis." Lena froze. Who has intentions? Who is crossing the line? Tell me what you mean." He swallowed, repeating Mr. George's words. He lowered his voice. "Whoever has a family should protect it. You heard Dad, didn't you?" Lena's face flushed like hot coal. Her eyes reflected his, sparkling, unpredictable, mixed with a hint of challenge, a touch of hesitation, and something deeply feminine and hard to explain. "So," she asked, softly, just loud enough for him to hear, "in your opinion, who needs to be protected?" The afternoon wind blew hard, making her brown shirt flutter as if it had a soul. Ryan felt choked. I don't know." Lena smiled, a bitter and sharp smile that made his heart ache. "Not really know? Or pretending not to know? Huh?" He didn't know, but his eyes and Lena's eyes in that moment were both looking towards the same place. That night, Mark came home late from work. On the way, he smiled to himself thinking about having his little brother back at home, which made his heart feel lighter. No matter how poor they were, having more people made the house happier. He saw a brighter future because the two brothers would share the hardships. He didn't realize that in the very house he trusted the most, two people were looking at each other with eyes no one dared to name. Time passed like the afternoon shadow creeping across the red brick yard, lengthening and then shortening. No one knew how much change it had brought to people's hearts. Ryan changed first. Since hearing Mr. George's veiled words, hearing Mark's trust in him, and hearing Lena's ambiguous questions, his heart was a tangled mess. But the more he thought, the more he pitied his brother. Mark was inherently honest and naive, carrying the burden of life on his shoulders, yet always smiling gently. If Ryan took one wrong step, he would become a betrayer, the bond of kinship that his parents had taught him to cherish. He looked at Mark as if looking into a large mirror, and that mirror showed him his own greed and weakness. As for Lena, her gaze became increasingly bitter, sharper, and held more unspoken words. Every evening, lying in his small room next to the main house, he would hear the faint vibration of a text message in his pocket. "Are you asleep? Help me put out the rice to dry tomorrow. There's something I want to tell you." At first, they were ordinary messages. Then the words became vague and elusive, as if intentionally setting a trap for his mind. "I'm tired a lot of the time. If only someone understood me. There are things a woman can't share with anyone." Ryan read them, his head hot, his hands trembling, his heart beating like a drum. But then he remembered Mark's diligent, toil-worn face, remembered his brother's voice saying, "Having you back, I'm so happy. It's lively at home." So he turned off his phone and faced the wall like a child hiding a crime. Lena didn't understand, but she continued to text. Not forcing, just persistently, with the slow and steady wins the race approach. Sometimes she would look at him in the yard, her eyes like fire, forcing him to quickly turn away. Ryan understood one thing. If he took one step further, he would never be able to look his brother in the eye again. So he avoided Lena. He avoided her gaze, close distances, and all the situations he used to enter innocently. But that's life. Avoiding one place only leads to an encounter in another. And that place was Hank's house. On the day of Hank's wife's memorial, the whole neighborhood was bustling. Several tables were set up in the yard, with guests coming and going. Lena came to help early in the afternoon. Her hands quickly picked vegetables, washed rice, and mixed the dipping sauce. Hank walked in and out, constantly glancing at her. He had been a widower for a long time. His body was dry like a twig, but his tongue was slick. His wife died of an illness, leaving an empty house and a man who always smelled faintly of sadness. Lena understood that, and she understood the way he looked at her. But she didn't push him away. She longed for something, to be looked at, noticed, to be seen by someone as still being a desirable woman. Her husband, Mark, genuinely loved her, but his love was so gentle that it was bland, so resigned that it was naive, failing to touch the woman's heart that had been too depleted. In the evening, guests gradually left. The last image of the crowd was a few old men, drunken, leaning on their canes, muttering as they walked. Lena stood cleaning the table, gathering dishes, her shoulders damp with sweat under the flickering yellow light. Hank, with the strong scent of alcohol around his mouth, stood leaning against the door, looking at her for a long time. "Hard work, huh? It's a shame the people next door didn't come to help." He spoke in a teasing voice. Lena slightly paused. "Which house?" "Your husband's house. Mark is too gentle. It's boring. And his little brother is strange today. The other day he was watching you wash clothes, but now he avoids you like the plague. When men avoid someone like that, something's up." Lena swallowed, avoiding his eyes. "You're talking nonsense." "Nonsense," he laughed. "When I offered you a cup of wine, why didn't you refuse immediately, but hesitated? When a woman hesitates, there are waves in her heart." Lena was stunned. Just then, the wind rushed in through the door, carrying the pungent smell of the rural night. Only the two of them were left in his house. The front yard was dark, the casuarina trees rustled, and a dog barked in the distance. He poured wine into a cup and offered it. "Sit down here. Drink a cup with me to ease the sadness. It's my wife's Memorial Day, and I'm grateful you came to help." His voice lowered, surprisingly sincere. Lena sat down, as if drawn into a vague abyss in her heart. Hank put the cup down, looking at her for a long time. "Lena, when a woman lives a hard life, it's easy for her heart to wander. Isn't that true for everyone?" She lowered her head, her heart pulsing. He continued, his voice hoarse. "You are beautiful, truly beautiful, but a beautiful woman who is not cherished suffers greatly." He hit the weakest spot in her heart, the loneliness that made her afraid to look in the mirror at night. She sighed softly. "You say, does anyone even see me?" "Yes, I've been seeing you for a long time." He answered immediately, his eyes deep. The wind blew hard, slamming the door against the wall with a thud. That sound seemed to tear down the very last barrier. Hank stepped closer, alcohol in his breath, desire in his eyes. "Don't hide it. Don't pretend anymore." Lena closed her eyes for 1 second, but it was the entire cold lifetime of that woman. In her mind, the image of Mark carrying fertilizer in the field, sweat pouring down, flashed. The image of Ryan, the young, dreamy eyes that once made her heart flutter, also flashed. But then, everything sank into a soft darkness like the night outside the yard. She said nothing, didn't retreat, didn't resist. That silence was the answer. And what had to happen, happened. Close to midnight, she walked out of Hank's house. Her hair was messy, carrying a lingering scent of alcohol and a heavy, stone-like feeling on her heart. Across the dirt road, the lights in Mr. George and Mrs. Helen's house were still on. Perhaps Mark was not yet asleep, waiting for his wife. Lena stood for a very long time with a tumultuous mix of guilt and pleasure in her heart. Everything intertwined like a broken spider web in the wind. She knew that tonight she had crossed a boundary line and could not go back. As for Ryan and his small room, he was still tossing and turning, unable to sleep. He bit his lip and wondered, why isn't she back yet? But he didn't know that some questions, as you grow older, you must learn not to ask anymore. In the sky, the late-night moon was pale like milk, hanging suspended in the void. And their story did not end. It merely paused where the unnamed fractures began. Dear listeners, the story of Lena, the emotional woman, Ryan, the young brother-in-law, Mark, the kind husband, and Hank, the widowed neighbor, has concluded with a lingering, precarious, and haunting open ending. A small, poor American town, seemingly gentle and peaceful. But in the dark corners of those dirt kitchens and old houses, there are still stories that even the people involved dare not name. This story is not to defend or punish anyone, but for us to reflect on women's hidden sorrows, men's dreams, the emptiness in the heart, and the very human missteps. Because some mistakes don't stem from malice, but from the earnest need for affection, from loneliness in one's own home, from the silent gaps that a husband and wife refuse to address. About Lena, the wife. She is a woman who is both blameworthy and pitiable. Her flirtatiousness is the surface, but beneath that exterior is a vulnerable heart, craving acknowledgement and appreciation. She was wrong to let instinct and loneliness lead her to Hank's house. The lesson is, the lack of subtle emotional connection in a marriage is a dangerous loophole that can push a woman to seek validation elsewhere. About Ryan, the brother-in-law. He is the embodiment of naive, passionate youth, yet with a profound sense of family loyalty. His value lies in knowing when to stop, and stopping out of love for his brother. The lesson is, between the boundaries of emotion and morality, kinship and sobriety are the anchors that save youth from foolish mistakes. About Mark, the husband. He is kind and hardworking, but his love lacked a voice, lacked dialogue, and lacked the subtlety to see the loneliness in his wife's eyes. The lesson is, a man who works hard and loves his wife may not necessarily keep her. Marriage needs the heart, not just sustenance. Passive indifference can sometimes be more destructive than overt betrayal. About Hank, the neighbor. He is an inevitable part of life, where human instinct sometimes overrides reason. He was the one who seized on Lena's loneliness. The lesson is, an empty environment, an easy opportunity, the loneliness of others, are the excuses for instinct to take over reason.